At this point, I want to show you something. I think I may get close to Jay over here. What I have with me is the text in Greek. Now, this is the Critical Standard Edition worldwide for a long time. So here is the text in Greek. And underneath it are all of these symbols here. And what those, let me get closer. Jay, for the people that are going to be in the visible audience, is this close enough?
Yeah.
Can you get that? Okay. So you can see a Greek text. All right, now, all of those symbols represent the history of every word in the gospel. And in the front over here, I have all of those things. Okay. It will have every known papyrus we have. You don't find a full gospel written in papyrus because it's fragile. They break apart. So we have fragments. Then, in addition to that, there are other types of fragments that are written. Remember, all these things were written on animal skin. Lamb skin, deer skin, whatever. Pounded really thin and written. And then you have the capital letters beginning with the Hebrew letter Aleph for A. Those are what are known as codices. A codex is an early book where instead of a scroll, you had flat sheets like in a book. And these listed here are the codices that are existent today that come to us from as early as toward the end of the 4th century. One of the oldest ones is known as the Codex Sinaiticus. It was found on Mount Sinai, the monastery of St. Catherine at the foot of Mount Sinai. The monks have been there since after Constantine. Or another one is Codex Vaticanus, that's again in the 4th century. There's another one, Alexandrinus, Alexandria. Remember, one of the great central intellectual scenes of the early church was from Alexandria. Every Sunday, you say a creed that comes to us from the Christians of Egypt, from Alexandria. St. Athanasius of Alexandria was at the Council of Nicaea. And he is the one who came up with the formula, God from God, light from light, true God from God, begotten, not made. And then he had to invent a word in Greek, homoousios. We say in Latin, consubstantial with the Father. Eternally begotten, not made. Because the idea is that the relationship of the Trinity, the relationship is from all eternity. You can't be a father or a mother unless you have a child, correct? And you cannot be a son unless you've got a parent. That's how they could explain that it wasn't, there was God, then God made the Son, then they both got together, hey, let's make the Spirit, you know. That is a heresy. So from all eternity, the relationship is from all eternity. And so that's why those texts then, and not only that, when you come to Mass, do we have like a pulpit Bible and we mark it and we read from that?
I hope not.
No. We use a lectionary, correct? We take sacred scripture and we divide it up to a series, a progressive series. Well, that's nothing new, because that's what the Jews do also. You have a cycle of readings. And the lectionaries go back early on in Christianity. In fact, there's one section in the Gospel of John that would not exist if it wasn't for the lectionary of Rome. And you'll be surprised when we get to that part in the Gospel of John. By the way, if everybody who has a Bible has that section in their Bible, and everybody does, even in a King James Bible, I got news for you. You do have the Catholic Bible. Because we're the ones who kept a certain section. And I'll tell you what it is in about 6 weeks from now. Yeah, that's right. Hey, I'm a teacher from way back, okay? But not only that, that critical apparatus also goes through every extant writing we have of people's analysis and homilies. Every word here is accounted for in terms of its historical accuracy. We could say the earliest codex we have is from about 380, 390 AD. But guess what? There's a famous man, his name is Origen. He's a catechist from Alexandria. He moves his catechetical school to Caesarea Maritima. This is about the year 250 or 4. He's famous because he's the one who was translating the Old Testament from Hebrew to Greek, learning how to pronounce Hebrew words. Then he did another column and another. And so when he gets to the Gospel of John, this is, as I said, 250 AD. And you compare what he was looking at with what we have today. Or the famous St. John Chrysostom. We had his feast day last week, correct? It'll show every father of the church, every ancient writer who wrote anything about the Gospel of John and the other Gospels too, what they were reading. So the text you have here, it's authenticated by a whole group of witnesses. That's why that apparatus is there. And now, having done that, we're going to do the following. Everybody, kindly now open up to the Gospel of John, chapter 1. Now, would anybody like to start reading? Go and volunteer, please.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. What came to be through him was life, and this life was the light of the human race. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.
Okay, that's enough. Now, we're going to reverse this into Hebrew. Reverse engineer it. I've been at CBU too long, okay? Big School of Engineering. All right. Remember, the Gospel of John comes to us from around the date that most people say. The Gospel of John that you have in your hand today, as it is, as this text is about 96 AD. So it's the last of the Gospels written. However, the Gospel of John has more Hebrew background than the other Gospels. And not only that, but archaeologically, the Gospel of John gives us places that deal directly with the Jerusalem, sites that are in Jerusalem as well as in Galilee, but especially Jerusalem. Now, about 75 years ago, maybe the 1920s, and it came out of Germany, many people were trying to tell us that the Gospel of John is influenced by Greek philosophy. Or the Gospel of John, because it contrasts light and darkness, you see the same thing, it's among one group of people who are called Gnostics, another group, anyway, it turns out the Gospel of John puts us more in touch with Hebrew than the other Gospels. And you're going to find that out real soon, as a matter of fact. Now, I will tell you now, I will have a handout next week. But I wanted to make sure I knew how many copies to make. So I wanted to get an idea before I had too many or too little. So you'll have a handout on one specific thing. And then I'll describe that momentarily. Now, in the beginning, ein arche, ein hologos, in the beginning. We're going to reverse engineer the Gospel of John into Hebrew. Now, this is it. The first word of the Bible. In the beginning. In Hebrew, it's Bereshit. Hebrew has a core or root word, and it has prefixes and suffixes that are attached to the word. They're not separated. Like in the beginning. But no, in Hebrew, it's attached. So be is the word you use for in. Rosh, and by the way, Hebrew doesn't have any real vowels. You can imagine if you were to spell English without vowels, you'd be surprised what type of words you'd come up with, correct? That's why it's so difficult. Rosh is the word for head or the start, like you're the head of the class. For example, last week, our Jewish friends celebrated Rosh Hashanah. Rosh, head or start, begin. Ha, the Shana, year. In the start, in the beginning, and now you've got this as a participle. Bereshit. And so he takes you right to Genesis. And the idea of beginning is critical to the Gospel of John, because there is a continuity from the beginning. This is the origin. What we have missed is that the Torah is prophecy. Let me see, let me get my little marker here. Okay. Torah. The first 5 books of the Old Testament. Sometimes it's translated as the law. Every time you read Paul's letters or you hear the word law, put the word Torah above it. There are 613 mitzvot, 613 commandments in the Torah. But the Torah is more than just laws. Now, I just so happen to have my Torah with me. And this is the edition that is called the, let's see here, yes. This is known as the Stone edition of the Torah, used by many Orthodox Jews. And so here we go. Now what is interesting is that the Torah is not just words. The Torah is the covenant. It's more than just the words. more than commandments. This is a covenant. It is the relationship with God.